just have a cocktail.
Hello, welcome to my humble country distillery. So you guys haven't been here before, I see.
Oh,
So I make 3 products. I make a whiskey, I make a gin, I make a thing called Settlers Tea. You guys want to try some?
yes, we do.
Okay.
Settlers tea, especially.
Well, we'll start you with the whiskey since everything else requires a little explanation.
Perfect.
What you have here is an American whiskey, or an American moonshine whiskey.
Outstanding.
$120 proof.
Yes, it is.
You ever owned a flask, thought to yourself, maybe this is the most worthless thing I've ever owned in my life, I can't get a decent drink off and there's not enough here to catch a buzz?
Yep.
Well, if you put 120 proof into a flask, all of a sudden it's the perfect size. See, it has to do with the way that they used to actually ensure quality and shipping in the old days, right? The only viable means of testing proof was, of course, the proof test, where they would invite you on board the naval vessels, they would mix whatever your product was with the gunpowder, they would set it off, and if it exploded, they didn't hang you. Now, being that they're going to hang you at about 110 proof, most folks have a tendency to overshoot that mark just a little bit, you know, storage and transportation losses, whatnot. So most of your pure from the factory shipping quality, shipping strength was about 120 to 130 proof.
Okay.
That's where the whole flask culture came about, and that's what sipping whiskey actually is. It's the unadulterated, pure, straight from the factory, undiluted. Right, when I got to its end consumer, of course, they could adulterate it however much they wanted, and then whatever their client base would accept. But in shipping, the quality had to be determined.
Interesting.
Got it.
Right?
Got it.
Little history lesson right there.
I like it to mean something. I like it to be, you know?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's kind of the point of this whole craft thing, right?
Right.
We're all supposed to be, and there's so much wonderful stuff in history that really most everybody is ignoring in this whole need to be super traditional. You know, and I literally am like, nobody's gonna
talk about
I'll
that?
just go ahead and take this thing. That's okay. No, we're good. Right? So yeah, I mean, we were trying to be Scotch and Irish. I'm either Scotch nor I'm Irish. I am an American. We have good whiskey. You know, you gotta look at like, is it the process or the product? And I guess the final answer is a little of both, right? You know, if you find a better way, you should use it.
Oh yeah.
Agreed.
So you got a gin too?
Yep. So the gin. So gin in the Middle Ages was more of an aquavit, more of a found and foraged medicinal herbs and spices. And the plague happened, and the British found out that juniper berries reduced swelling in the glands, so they thought it cured the plague. And that's when gin became the horrifying juniper heavy paint thinner that we know of today. For that, it was a really nice little floral drink and a homeopathic drink. Got all the medicinal botanicals in there. I actually steeped my botanicals in the alcohol for 48 hours to actually strip out all the essential oils. I'll give you a little one. These are best as a shot.
Perfect.
All right. I need a little medicinal in my life.
Oh man. You know, and this is where the weed kids have actually contributed to science now, right? Thanks to the weed kids, we know that tinctures work, right?
Yes, they do.
Right? They've contributed to science. Finally, good hippie. Go back to work.
Cheers, Carl. Thanks.
Oh, that's great, Carl.
That's the original conspiracy of little old ladies. The little old ladies have been medicating us for thousands of years. They didn't bother telling us. They just put it in our booze and made it taste delicious.
That's really good, man.
Right? And really good for you. That's the other thing that you're hitting right now is you're getting a vitamin rush out of things that you haven't gotten forever. Your body is like, you know, again, this was medicine. That's why the British, after the plague, then made the gin into the marching juice for the British Army. And it was a turning point in history in which actually more soldiers died in battle than did of dysentery.
Right?
That was a huge turning point in military history. So in that same thing, we busted out the Settlers Tea. I like the old medicinals, and I like it to be good for you if I can help it. You know, it helps me with my whole I'm a drug dealer for a living thing. It does keep me awake at night, right? So if I can make it healthier or at least less toxic, then by God, maybe I should. So the Settlers Tea. So when the settlers first got here to Montana, they were dropping us scurvy because there's no vegetables here. So they started making a tea out of rose hips and mint leaf with a little teeny bit of the English breakfast tea that they brought with them in order to get their vitamin C. They made it as a tea for years because, of course, it's the only damn thing that grows out here. So I finally had that epiphany moment, which was, hey, Carl, what's the other way to strip essential oils? Why, Carl, that'd be alcohol. You mean that thing we do?
How do you drink this, Carl?
This one, I'm not so sure. It goes really good either way. It's great in coffee. It's a very low alcohol. It's only 60 proof. So.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Where you been all my life?
Just,
Wow,
just
man.
out here making a study of the old ways of doing things. I mean, we have ways that this is a completely Montana, completely Northwestern, settler era home remedy. Why are we not doing this? Right?
Yeah.
Well, fortunately, you are. There we go.
Thankfully.
Should we go sit down?
Yeah, let's go
on
sit
in.
down, have a chat.
You guys want more of anything?
I'm good with this for now, Carl.
All right.
Thank you.
I'll break for more.
Absolutely.
So welcome to my little distillery.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, my pleasure.
So today, here at the MicroShiner podcast, we're here at Steel Toe Distillery in Potomac, Montana. Carl's been nice enough to have us out and host us. We're gonna get a little history lesson and talk about the process and what motivated Carl to get into this world. Thanks, Carl.
My pleasure. Thanks for coming, you guys. Welcome to my little hippie pad.
It's great,
We're-
man. It's great. We're utilizing the new 360 camera, and hopefully folks that are on the internet listening to our podcast and watching it get to see we're actually right in the heart of the beast where Carl makes his 3 products, which we were just introduced to. So again, thanks for having us. Super excited to be here. Let's start with, I think I'm burning to know, and I think our audience is, how'd you get into this?
Hobby is a hobby for years and years and years, and finally just decided to go legit,
And the balls got rolling, and so you started in a smaller space.
Yep, at that point we were in an 11 by 15 building with that still over there.
Okay,
That was my first commercial still.
cool.
It was quite cozy. I was actually the smallest distiller in the world at that point. I don't know if I'm still there, but I'm definitely in the running.
Awesome. So what was the motivation besides, so you dabbled in it, but you said you kind of wanted to maybe turn it into a living, so to speak,
Yeah,
or
essentially,
introduce your friends and family to it?
Yep, it was my wife that really was the impetus to actually go legit and, and actually start it as a business. And of course, I have a proven history with money. So she, that's the nice thing about it. I make the booze, she does the books, so it's great. So all the really smarty stuff I don't even have to deal with.
Perfect.
I'm just a simple guy making moonshine in the woods.
I love it. Americana, right here at its finest.
Carl, before we got started, you were, I think, telling Ryan about the sanctuary and that this was somewhat to help fund that a little bit.
Yep, back in the day, that's how we were doing anything we could to keep the wildlife sanctuary open.
So you had a wildlife sanctuary here on premise?
Yep.
Can you tell us a little bit about that real quick?
That was the Wolf Keep Wildlife Sanctuary. There's actually still some videos on YouTube if you're interested and want to see what it looked like with long hair. I was young, I was trying to save the world.
We all were at one point.
Right? So, it was the 7th largest private wolf sanctuary in the world. It's a very, very short list. But,
So what motivated you so you bought this piece of property here in Potomac and started with that?
yep.
And just had a love of animals and life and wanted to see if you could make a go of it?
Well, the wolf thing, it's kind of an interesting story. I don't know. I got sort of hooked on some bad things, and I got this wolf hybrid that, I hated them drugs. Every time I go to Beaumont, I go, no, Dad, don't take me walkies. So I walked the goddamn dog 5-6 times a day, 10, 12 miles at a time. A couple months went by, I realized I was clean. The old joke, man, never save an Indian, right? So I spent the next 20 years trying to kind of make that right. So
Yes.
So yeah, I built a giant wool sanctuary, locked myself in with a bunch of wolves, and whatever else was broken. Our basic criteria was, did you call everybody else? They say no. Damn it. That's all we got. Yeah, everything. Be a shorter list to tell you what we didn't rehab and what we didn't do. But
Noble effort, though.
yeah, you gotta do
And it
something.
seems like you enjoyed your time, kind of probably learned about yourself, learned about what you'd done in the past, and maybe like, okay, I'm going to do things differently in life now. Is that somewhat accurate?
Yep. But at the end of the day, and that's where we get into the distillery thing, is that, running a wildlife sanctuary made me real popular with the hippies. It didn't make me real popular with the, right-wing Republican guys that would give me a job. So I had to make one up. So
Boom.
here we are.
Here we are. So started in that small space.
Yep.
How long were you in there?
2 years before we got this, almost 3 years before we got up into this building.
Okay. And you've been here for a couple.
Yeah, coming on 2 years now.
Okay. Walk us through, I have tons of questions, but walk us through an average, like from start to finish. How long does it take you once you dive in and head first into, okay, I'm going to distill this batch today. And they probably all vary on the 3 different liquors that you produce.
No, in fact, they're all the same exact base.
Okay, cool.
That's the thing, is that so I run a sugar base because when I used to read the old moonshiner recipes, I'd read wheat whiskey, rye whiskey, barley whiskey, good whiskey. Tell me more of this good whiskey of which you speak. Right?
Yes.
Well, it was all the sugar-based stuff, and for the longest time I completely discounted it. I thought it was an old moonshiner joke, like, this is the good whiskey, right? Took an old Amish distiller, anonymous distiller. This is actual, it's the fucking coolest label in the world. Anyway, he was one to include me into it. He said, Carl, sugar was the first luxury crop. It wasn't even distributed in America. 99% of it was harvested for British tea by the East Indies Trading Company. It wasn't even just, So if you wanted sugar in Kentucky, you literally had to get in your horse and buggy and drive all the way down to Florida, beg, borrow, steal, bribe, hopefully come back with some sugar.
Really?
So it was only ever made for themselves or for weddings.
Wow.
Yeah, right? This is what I'm talking about. We have American history in this, right?
Yes.
So those guys knew that it was the best thing out there. Everybody else drank corn because that shit was cheap.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
We had rye, we had barley, we had because we ate it. It was everywhere. There was silage, there was waste. But with sugar, you literally had to make a concerted effort to make a batch of that. And I'll tell you what, the first batch I made, and I was just doing straight, undiluted moonshine right off the tap.
Mm-hmm.
It was fucking delicious. And I was like, wow, this is what I make now. In fact, try a little bit.
Oh, man.
There, you got a clean one?
Yep.
Get you a clean one. I think you'll see what I mean right away. Let me get you actual clean.
Okay. This is fantastic.
So this is basically right off the tap. Undiluted 150 proof.
Man. Hold on to your hat. Thank you.
I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Well, you want to be careful.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Pleasantly surprised. Not the rocket fuel that I was expecting.
Nope.
I mean, that is clean, Carl.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
That's
I
really...
pull a lot out. I make a very generous cut. I've got great water that comes from 400 feet below the earth. I mean, this water hasn't seen the light of day since the Pleistocene,
Wow.
And so that's a huge part of this is, we all got raised in the same beer ads.
Yep.
It's in the water.
Right?
Right? So
Yes.
You don't get to decide where you build your distillery. You have to build your distillery with water is good. Right?
Yes.
And that makes all the difference in the world.
It does. And if this is a true testament, it shows right there. I've had a little bit of moonshine in my life, but it usually is...
Yeah, it's a little gritty, the cut's not good. It's,
Yep.
You've got people that are more interested in the money than the product. And that's
part of the problem.
Yep, and that's where I come in, right? I don't have a food chain. I'm it. My wife does the books, I make the booze, nobody fucks with me. I make this shit to my standards.
Love it.
I don't give a fuck. You know?
Yeah.
You know?
You do it the way you want and the way you think it should be done.
Right. So, and I don't, you know, most people are, you got a distiller that works for a manager, that works for an owner, that works for a bank. You've got a food chain of command. And so, you know, certain allowances have to be made for monetary profit, which is cool. I can dig it. You know, I'm all about free market. I'm all about that. But,
Sure.
but if I'm putting my name on it, and I do,
You want it to be righteous.
yep,
Uncle Carl's.
better be the fucking best that I can do. And if it's not, then fuck me. Right?
Amen, brother.
Carl, you were saying that you make a pretty liberal cut.
Yep.
And Ryan had got us started down the path. You said you start with the same base. So you built this still, then you start that sugar base and you distill that, and then you make your cut. Can you walk us a little further through with that?
All right, so basically with the sugar base, I'm not mashing. I don't have anything to do. All I have to do is clarify the sugar in the solution, add the yeast, and it takes about 4 or 5 days to ferment. Then we run through the still. It takes about 30 hours to go through the still. I started up at 5 o'clock at night, let it run all night. I mean, to cut it about 6 to 7 o'clock in the morning. Let it run all again that day and that night, and then the next morning is when I shut her down.
Okay. So you have it refined to this process.
Yep.
So when you finally shut it down, what comes next?
At that point, if it's going to be whiskey, it goes into kegs and goes down the basin to be aged between a year and 7 years, depending.
Okay.
With gin or tea, as you can see over there, there's stuff that's steeping in botanicals.
Yep.
So the actually put the botanicals in the alcohol and steep them for 48 hours to actually strip out all the essential oils.
Okay.
Right? Because there I am. I've got the stuff. I've got the alcohol. Why wouldn't I take the essential oils? Why wouldn't I make it as healthy for you as I can? Again, it goes back to the whole thing, right?
So cool.
It's a different thought process on the product, right? And see, the nice thing is I own the building, I own the property, I don't owe the bank any money, so I can coast, right? I don't have to sell a lot. I don't make a lot of money, you know, but I don't have to.
Right.
Right. All I gotta do is pay my property taxes, keep gas in my chainsaw, and good to go.
Life is good.
Life is good.
So what prompted you to, did you always, after you were like, okay, the moonshine thing's one thing, the whiskey's another, what prompted you to do the medicinal thing?
Nobody else was doing it, and it's the right thing to do. I mean, wow.
Right.
You know, and there's so many. There's like I've been experimenting with some Chinese stuff, and it's delicious.
Cool.
And see, I had this weird epiphany one day where I was talking about your taste buds technically should be able to detect the right amount of minerals and stuff like that your body desires and needs, and that's where flavor comes from, right? Things that taste good to us are good for us,
yeah.
Mostly And I got to thinking about these old medicinal recipes, and I'm like, wait a minute. You know, maybe I should look at these as, you know, these are their benefits. It's not really designed for a specific thing. It's more designed around flavor. However, why the hell not?
Right.
You know?
Awesome.
Alcohol stabilized vitamins. You can put in a bunker. It'll be there for 1,000 years.
Totally.
You know?
So you just went with it, you thought of it and said, I'm going to do a little bit of history, research, boom.
Yep.
Off and running. Man, so cool. So I think we mentioned earlier, but just cover again real quick the 3 products that you're making.
I make an American Prohibition style whiskey, a European style gin, and a Montana based Settlers tea.
Okay. And the Settlers tea is the one that's right here.
Nope, that's gin.
That's the gin. And this is the tea. Okay.
That's just been filtered. That's got to sit for another, at least 48. I just bought that last night. So.
Okay. Very cool. And I think you touched on it. Kobe, you have a question?
I do. So, Carl, you were telling us a story earlier about how there's two thoughts that people will have in the morning after. It was kind of relating back to your liberal cuts and the way that you approach the way you make your spirit. And you said, there's two thoughts that people are going to have in the morning when they wake up after drinking some of my stuff. And can you share with us again that story?
Well, so basically it's this. It's you own the moral of the story is that the first thing when you open your eyes tomorrow morning and you wake up and you think of me, you will decide at that point whether or not you will be drinking this product again. And if you're really, really hungover, you're gonna be like, fucking Carl's a liar, right? But if you're not hungover and you had a really good night and you think of me and you go, fucking Carl was right, then I gotcha, right? See, because the problem with the micro distilleries is this, retention. You can talk to people and they'll say, oh yes, I've tried that. Oh, I've totally tried that. But do you drink that? Right?
Right.
And that's where we're failing in a distillery movement, is that we're still a novelty, right? But the blush has totally worn off the novelty at this point. Mm-hmm. Now it's where we separate, right? The great attrition is going to be coming with the distilleries. Is going to see who's going to make it once the blush is off.
Right.
Right. Once it's not new anymore. And that's the bottom line is retention. And that's what I was talking about before about being a moonshiner, is about exclusively selling to your friends and your neighbors, right? You can't, if you boys and your buddies are going to kick your ass, number one, and number two, these are your friends and your neighbors. You're going to have to see them every single day for the rest of your life. It better be good.
Yep.
It better be, it better be like a fair winning apple pie at the county fair, man. That shit better be good.
Well said. Well said. I love this, man. It's like a history lesson in the making.
I like it to mean something, as opposed to like, this is cucumber flavored whatever. You know what I mean? I like it to be something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
I agree completely. I think that's totally lost, and it's super important. Ryan and I, in one of the last podcasts, were discussing this, in that, there was utility to fermentation and alcohol throughout all of civilization up to the point where we kind of forgot everything that happened after, prior to the last 1,000 years, right? And that one of the key things about spirits was you could pack a lot of calories in there. So you take some wheat and you ferment it and distill it, and now you can put that on the shelf for winter, and you can know you'll at least have this many calories to get you through the winter, and it's not going to spoil.
Right.
And there's just so many things, and you're alluding to a ton of them, Carl, and I just love your philosophy and everything you're speaking to, because there's so much of the history of this and what it really means and why we do it that's completely lost, and everybody just goes, well, I just need cheap stuff so I can get banged up on Friday night. And there's a lot more to it, and you bring a lot of that out, and I just really appreciate it. I think it's great.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, I had a friend of mine actually in college that did a college thesis on beer being the basis of civilization, i.e. storage and transportation of grain. Grain goes bad, beer lasts for a while, right? To get it to market, to get it that far without it rotting on the carts, they had to have a way to ship it, And so that's the basis of. It's really honestly the basis of civilization.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, and there's some new academic work that really speaks to that people are starting to recognize those things. And I think lots of people used to recognize it, and then we kind of got into this academic culture where if you didn't learn it at school, then it's kind of meaningless. And now there's some actual study that's going into that. It's coming back around and say, without alcohol, there is not civilization. Civilization and alcohol go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And it has to be, there has to be context. Otherwise, you're going to get loose and you're going to get addicted and you're going to be laying in the gutter. But if there's context and your whole family comes around and you do it on special occasions, or you do it at night with dinner, you have a shot or whatever that happens to be, then it really makes sense and it contributes. I think there's a lot coming out right now about that. And I think this whole craft and distillery movement is helping start to bring those conversations again to the fore, because if I just go to the liquor store and I buy a cheap handle of 175 plastic, I'm not sitting down here with you having this conversation. And that's where I think this is so meaningful, that we get to come here, meet you in person,
right.
Have these conversations over this.
Right, and you're learning about stuff. You're getting a couple of drinks. It's back to what it should be, a hobby as opposed to an addiction.
Yeah. Well said. Carl, the time has ticked away. Let's just wrap up, and I guess my final question is, I have so many more other questions, and we're going to probably have to come back here. I guess, what is the one thing about craft spirits that you would like consumers to know about?
It's a tough question. You know, it's hard. See, one of the reasons I'm Steel Toe Distillery is that I work for a living. I try to keep my prices low enough where I'm selling a good quality product at a good quality price.
Yep.
I'm making $7 to $9 dollars off each bottle. You know, so I mean, it's not, at the end of the day, we're not taking home